in the old days, personal information, what we call PII in the U.S. Had a very
the US PII term.
I know. Sorry about that. But we had very specific things that were PII. So one of the huge things that GDPR and CCPA have done is redefined what's personal information. So what's the definition of personal information, and what does that mean in real world?
Yeah, so I think this concept of kind of PII and having specific categories, kind of name, number plate, certain, identifier,
security number, right?
Security number,
checking account number, privileged identifier. It would be a general term that we would use, right?
Indeed, so there's some certainty in that, and obviously that helps, especially security guys, right? They know, right, this information falls under the PII category, so we're treating it in a particular way within the organization. Personal data is a much broader concept, and it goes back to this idea of Europe considering the protection of personal data as being a fundamental human right. So the way in which they define personal data is any information that can identify an individual or be used to single out an individual is personal data. Because if you can single out somebody, then you can attribute certain things to that individual. And once you're able to make that attribution, actually, you can impact that individual's life in a positive or negative way. And that's what gives rise to their rights and freedoms and their human rights potentially being compromised.
And that could be almost anything, right? I mean, that's your sexual orientation, your religious affiliation, political party, dog's name. I mean, like literally almost anything could be used to identify, especially in combination with other components, right? Yeah. And then in the US,
especially when linked in with other things,
right? Yeah, exactly. And then in the US with the CCPA, they even go so far as to extend that to or your household, right? So it's the individual or their household. So now you're into like anyone in your, like anything that could be used to identify the household, which is, now you're into your children, now you're into your pet. I mean, so literally I tell, if you have any information about somebody, consider it personal information.
Right? And that's a safe way to approach it. But then also have in place an opportunity to do your risk assessment, right? So, the legislation doesn't prevent you from processing data. Actually, part of what the legislation is designed to do is to facilitate the flow of data. But you need to do the risk assessment, and where you identify risks to individuals, ways to mitigate that risk.